Well, welcome to the latest edition of Trojan Football Talk. I'm your host, Tom Vartanian. Today's show brought to you by AmeriQ Credit Union for every day, for everything. Located next to Little Caesars at 3944 Route 281 in Cortland. Part of Cortland Voice, the exclusive media partner of Trojan Football Talk. For all your local news and sports in Cortland County at no cost to you, check out cortlandvoice.com. By the Royal Auto Group on Route 281 in Cortland, the home of no hassle, no razzle dazzle. Check them out at royalautogroup.com. By Yemen Real Estate at the entrance to Yemen Park off I-81, exit 11 in Cortland. By Nikki C's Hometown Pizzeria and Meatball Shop on Route 281 next to Hobo's in Homer. Find them online for fast, secure ordering or call 607-749-5300. They have a unique menu with dietary specific options. Nikki C's, your grab and go specialists. By Graftex, located on Elm Street in Cortland. Founded in 1984, they provide custom screen printing and embroidery for teams and local businesses. Graftex continues its dedication to servicing customers' needs for innovative graphic designs, custom and printed apparel, and quality service. They are easy to contact at 1-800-417-7791. By Seven Valley Agency at 18 Tompkins Street in Cortland for all your personalized insurance services. Give them a call at 607-753-1821 or check them out online at sevenvalleyagency.com. Seven Valley Agency, where your money matters, our advice counts. By M&D Deli, located on Central Avenue in Cortland, open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. M&D has breakfast sandwiches, bakery items, and daily lunch specials. They are also available for catering. Check out their Facebook page for more information. Stop by or call 607-753-TO-GO. That's 753-8646. And look for their new food truck coming this spring. By Crop Growers LLP, the first choice in crop insurance located in Homer. Contact KC Slade at 607-591-2460 for more information. And by the First National Bank of Dryden at 12 South Main Street in Homer. Safe, secure, and locally owned for all your banking needs. For more information, stop by, call 607-662-4179, or check them out online at drydenbank.com. Well, this is going to be a fun podcast. We go back to my early days of being a writer in the Cortland area, and he was just the latest in the line of good tailbacks that Homer has had year after year after year, it seems to be. And never got a 1,000-yard season, but two very close brushes with that, I guess is the best way to put it. But again, he finished his career with 1,896 yards at number 10th on the all-time career rushing list. Went on to play a little bit of football at Cornell. So if you haven't figured out who I'm talking about yet, you may shortly, as we welcome from the class of 2004 at Homer, joining us, Luke Siwula. Welcome, Luke.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here, and thanks for putting this on.
So, like I said, it's been. Can you what do you think about it now? It's been almost 20 years since you graduated from Homer. Can you imagine it's been that long?
It's really crazy to think about. Yeah, 2004. I mean, we're pushing 20 years now, and even thinking back to the college playing days. You know, I was class of 2008, so man, 14 years since I've even strapped on the pads here. So yeah, it's been a minute.
So, as we said, we'll talk about your two very good, outstanding varsity careers. Unfortunately, the last game of your career was not quite what we had hoped for, and ironically, that game you probably would have got your 1,000 yards for the season because you ended up at 969 your senior season. But we'll talk about that when we get there. Well, what got you interested in playing football back when you were a little Luke Siwula running around?
Yeah, I think back to the earliest days of moving to Homer. So I was actually born in Pocatello, Idaho, and my mom was from the Groton area, and my dad actually grew up in Dallas, Texas, and New Mexico. But I remember back to my earliest days. I moved to Phelps Drive. The Hayes family, they were my neighbors, and we would all play football in the cul-de-sac of the street. There's a little dead end there, and I would put on my full Dan Marino pads. I'd put the helmet on, the jersey on, and I'd go try to play with the big boys, and they would usually push me to the side. So I was definitely, always kind of chomping at the bit to play football, and then. When it comes to Homer and everyone's starting football, it's the backyard recess, line them up and that's what you're doing during recess in the winter and spring and fall as well. So definitely Yeah, it's always been something that I love to do, love to compete, love to play every sport, and that's really where it started for me.
I'll throw this at you just because you were saying about that, didn't matter what the weather was. Because I noticed it now. Back when I was in high school and before I was in high school, thought nothing of going out in 10-degree weather and snow up to your knees and play football in the backyard. Now I hate to see snow, much less have to worry about when it gets down below 20 degrees anymore.
Yeah, definitely. If you didn't have your snow pants for recess back in the day, you were going home from school with some soaking jeans, getting tackled in the snow. So yeah, I mean, we got after each other, just during that one period. I think back to the elementary school days, first, second grade, and then I got into organized football in third grade through the program in Homer, actually.
So what was it like when you finally got to play some organized football and you started playing, with the youth football program at Homer? What was that like?
Well, I was always jealous because my good friend at the time, Tim McDermott, he met the age requirements, so he got to play organized football in second grade, and so he got a year head start on me, and I was always upset about that. But you think back to third grade, and I don't even know if they let him do this now. But we would walk from the school all the way over to Griggs and have practice there. So I was a 49er. I'm sure as many people have talked about, you had the 49ers, the Jets, the Bandits, and the Trojans back in the day, all coached by the volunteer fire department. But yeah, I was a 49er, and I was always a fast kid. So I think I just kind of acclimated to the running back position from the very start.
Well, I was gonna say, yeah, it was interesting. Like you said, when you played as a kid, you dressed up as the Dan Marino outfit and everything, and as a quarterback position. But you became you actually were a running back your whole career.
I did have one stint at quarterback. It was the All-Star game one year for Small Fry, and Will Rumsey, who was actually my quarterback on the varsity team. He got hurt, so they, for whatever reason, decided to suit me up at quarterback, and I got to sling the ball a little bit in the All-Star game, but definitely not my strength. I don't have that arm, that's for sure. I'm more of a give me the ball and let me hit you.
So once you got done with the youth days, it was time to move on to the modified program over at the junior high school. Who were your coaches back then, and what your experiences like there?
Yeah, so I again, I was lucky to have been coached by Coach Baden, through through the modified program with Jeff Tabell, who was his assistant. I remember showing up. I think we had to go to the high school to pick up our pads, and it was a cool experience. It was the first time I met Tabell, and then Coach Baden, he'd been doing that for at that point a long time too. So I really got a lot of that Homer football tradition instilled in me, from the very start.
I know it's a big thing with them now. They've been doing it, and I'm pretty much sure they did it right back then. You actually kind of started learning to a degree with the varsity playbook and all that stuff back just as far as a junior high kid.
Oh, I ran the same playbook in third grade as I did as a senior in high school. It was all the same. Yeah, no, and that's you think about like the success that Homer's had. I mean, that is such a huge element of it, right? The teaching of fundamentals from a young age, the continuity between levels of football. Coach Podsilic is obviously very involved in having conversations and talking to coaches from every level. So it's really cool to see. It's like you think about European soccer now, and they got like the youth programs of kids that are 15 years old and getting trained to be pros one day. It almost felt like that. We got that hard-nosed football, that discipline, and ultimately pretty much the same playbook instilled in us from a very early age.
So after those junior high days, was on to the JV ranks for a couple seasons. What was your experiences as a JV football player with Homer?
Yeah, I was always a little bummed. I never got moved up early, so I did 2 full years as JV. I think thinking back, there was one guy my year, Logan Mawsey, who got moved up as a sophomore. but I played 2 full years of JV under Coach Humphrey with a great actually volunteer cast of a bunch of guys who were doing their degrees at Cortland State. And sophomore year, I think we went undefeated actually. Sophomore year, we had a pretty good team. So I mean, I loved every bit of it. And even though I still had that chip on my shoulder, I wanted to be competing in the big time, the varsity level. And I've kind of always had that chip on my shoulder, actually.
Yeah, they've never been shy about that. 2002, your varsity debut, your first season on the varsity squad. Chad Burrance had been the tailback the year before, actually. I think Chad he graduated, and so next in line became Luke Siwula. But you also had some pretty good guys in the backfield with you. When you come back and look at things, you had, of course, like you said, Will Rumsey was a quarterback. You had Morgan Du Bois, who was a senior, all-around athlete. Derek Davies, if I remember, Derek pretty much played a lot of fullback. You had Pat Odell, Jeff Kaltenbach, Chris Johnson. But you set the pace that year of 147 carries for 927 yards, 8 touchdowns on the year, including a long run of 81 yards on the offensive side.
Yeah, no, those. I mean, Morgan. I'll always say this. Morgan was one of the best athletes I ever played with, and to get the chance to kind of find my niche and my role within that team. Morgan did a little bit of everything for us. He from halfback to quarterback to receiver to just about everything. And Jeff Kaltenbach, had very much been a mentor to me all up throughout the ranks. A very close friend of mine, still to this day. Who was just a year above me, a tailback from the start, from the modified ranks to JV, a good friend of mine. But that year was an interesting one because what you didn't mention is we actually moved up from Class B to Class A that year. And I guess it just must have been, a testament. I had a decent sized class. We were like 200 plus kids in my class. And I guess the class above us, we hit that threshold. And Homer has, pretty much always been a B school. But for that one year, we moved up to A. And it was, we fought, man. It was competitive. It was difficult. It was definitely kind of next level football, that we've been used to. And I think we probably ended that 2002 season up, if I remember, pretty much like 50-50, like, what was the record? Do you have it in front of you there? I would love to know.
Yeah,
it was disappointing. It was disappointing. We were playing the Fowlers. I remember, we'd go to CNS. We had to play, sorry, not CNS. Who was it?
CBA.
Well, CBA. Yeah, I still remember that game. CBA, we got up 7-0. Derek Davis from the very get-go, fullback trap up the middle. He took it 60 yards, and that was when CBA had Greg Paulus as their quarterback. Greg went on to have quite a career as a point guard at Duke, and then transferred into Syracuse and was starting quarterback at Syracuse. But yeah, we got up 7-0 on CBA that year, and we're feeling pretty good about it. And then they rolled off like 41 points on us. We lost like 41-7. But yeah, it was tough. We played CBA. We played, like I said, Fowler. We played. We played a bunch of Fulton. Or sorry, Fulton's what I meant to say. Yeah, and then Fowler. Yeah, Fowler as well. Although we beat Fowler, Fulton was a tough one. I remember going out to Fulton. Whatever 2.5 hours north of Homer, and it was freezing cold, and I think we lost that one. And I actually ended up playing with a guy from Fulton, who's a really good football player at Cornell in my later days too. Yeah,
that was like I said, that was the adventure into the Class A again. 1-6 in the league, 3-6 overall, and
oh man, we didn't even get 500, huh? Jeez, I thought we did.
And you actually lost the first 6 games of that year. You lost to ESM 26-6, then 50-22 against Fulton. Then a close 19-14 loss to Jamesville DeWitt. One game I remember this game just jumps out at me because there was a Cortland game similar to this, but had a chance for the first win, the 4th game of the year, but lost 38-32 in double overtime at Chittenango.
Oh yeah, I remember that when it was pouring rain. So,
Then a close again, a 16-8 loss of Fowler. So that's why I can see where you thought you were close to 500 because there's two games there where you guys could have won it. Could have won games, and yeah, instead of 3-6, that would have been pretty much a 5-4 overall mark. So I mean, so the potential was there, but then yeah, CBA 62-10. But then he closed out the season with a 3-game winning streak, and it all started with, of course, the neighbors just a few minutes away, a 35-20 victory at Cortland.
oh,
I
yeah,
believe, if I'm not mistaken, that's the game Will's the quarterback, and I think there was no real set game plan. I think Will Rumsey called the first dozen or more plays on offense, and you guys were scoring like crazy.
yeah, no, that was that. To be honest with you, that was one of my best high school football memories. That was the year I think we played at Cortland, right?
Yep.
And we warmed up at Homer. 15 minutes before game time, loaded on the bus, rolled right over to Cortland onto the field, ready to kick off. Didn't need any warm up or anything. And yeah, I think we kind of had a little system to start the game and marched down the field and scored and that was certainly a special one. I remember riding the bus back, feeling pretty high. Obviously, my first experience with the big Cortland Homer crosstown rivalry and having come out on top meant a lot. A lot of those guys we played with at Homer in our small fry program, so knew a lot of them pretty closely, and I still remember. I think it was that night. I think I went into Tops that night, and they had just put out the Cortland Standard for the next day, and there's two pictures of me on the front page from that game, and I was like, man, all right, this is pretty cool. I can get used to winning games and scoring touchdowns.
Then they did close out the season with a couple of non-league, like a couple of crossover games because you weren't in sectionals that year, but those were wins as well. You beat Mexico 44-14, then closed out the season with a 35-0 shutout of Phoenix. A couple of home games there for you.
Yeah, I think the highlight, like I said, was Cortland. I think after the Cortland game, for us, and so we really we treated that Cortland game as our Super Bowl, and I that so much to me, what a game it was. But it was certainly, it was an experience, especially coming from a small town like Homer, where we're putting 165-pound linemen, to face off against some bigger boys at bigger schools. It showed me that, that there's a lot of folks out there that play football and a lot of competition, and if we wanted to let in.
Well, this is one problem I don't like about Zoom calls. They have a couple of little glitches there, but that's the way Zoom calls are. That's why one day I'm going to get a studio built and do everything over the phone and have a real studio.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think my internet's been a little unstable for a second.
Ours is probably was too here. It's no surprise, but as you said, we talked about some of the guys on the offensive side. Of course, like we say, it was Will Rumsey was the quarterback. That was his junior season. And you just said Morgan did a little bit of everything. Morgan ran for 483 yards and 6 touchdowns, was 8 for 20 passing for another 175 yards through 3 touchdowns, and had 13 catches for 182 yards as well. So yeah, so Morgan did a little bit of everything on that team. Well, how about let's talk a little bit. Like I said, one thing I've been liking to do with guys, like, well, there's a guy we should talk about. We'll talk about a senior. Well, he is part of the line technically, so yes, so it kind of leads us into talking about the line. But a tight end named Russ Osho led the team that year, 15 receptions, 218 yards, and had a couple touchdowns. But he was just like he was that outside part of of a growing offensive line that Homer had that year.
Yeah, I mean, Russ was a great player. He always was. Obviously had that height. About how football has changed so much and how tight ends have really become that dual threat. player where if you can get them in an open field with a linebacker covering them, hit them up the seam. We did a lot of that with Russ. So obviously a big frame, could block on the line too. So certainly, he was great. Our line that year, man, I used to remember going into every season. I would get so excited, and I would I'd be in class and I'd be writing out what our starting lineup was going to look like for the next year, and every year I would just be, I'm like, all right, yeah, no one's going to beat us this year, and we had some big boys on the line, but I still always remember David Potsilic. Obviously, he's coaching at Homer. Hopefully, going to take over at some point. His father is big shoes that he sent into the program here, but David was 165-pound center, and it just goes to show, like, the game of football, even though so many people like to associate it with strength and brute force and this and that, it's more of a mental game than anything. And I think as I continue to develop in my career, I really learned that going into college and having to study tape every week and really, there's a lot going on. So if you can execute your assignment better than the other guy, and you can do it in unison as a team, like you're going to set yourself up for success. So yeah, we had, that class was a special one. I was always really close with the class above me. Like you mentioned, Chad Johnson, Morgan, Jeff Kaltenbach, all still good friends of mine. And even though that season, was a bit of a tough one, 3-6, like you mentioned, leading up to that point, having played through the modified ranks, the JV ranks, and the small fry ranks, I was always really close to that team. So that was, it was a fun year. I think an eye-opening year. And like I mentioned, going into that off season, I'm like, man, we're gonna have to get better. I don't want to be 3-6 again.
Well, someone I could talk about some linemen, the seniors, this year, the guys above you, there was Matt Smith, Travis Young, Jason Stone, Sean Allen, Merton Smith,
Merton,
Jamison Lawton was.
Yeah, Jameson, he was a beast. Jameson was an absolute beast.
And then the junior group of those linemen included Charlie McTavish, Brad Zatowski, Dan Lynch, because you mentioned David Potsilic, Pat McLaurin was there as well. Max Benz was a junior on that team.
Yep.
Also had a young sophomore that was fairly good size too, at 6'1", 265. A sophomore called Jake Sotter was on the line that year. And of course, he just the other big guy as far as linemen on this team. I still don't remember him playing that much, but I just know that the ultimate sad part of the story. But he was a junior this year, 6'3", 265. That was Brian Zarnecki.
I almost forgot to mention Brian. Brian was always, I feel like, a bit of a larger than life, version of amongst the guys playing football my year. When we were kids, I still got pictures, playing backyard football for my birthday, when I'm 9 years old or whatever. And Brock Catalano and Brian Zarnecki were actually the two kids that were, twice the size of every single one of us. And I mean, Brian, came from a football family. His father coached at Cornell State and I think a bunch of other places. And he, sophomore year when Brian got moved up to the varsity team, he was already getting letters from all the top programs across the country. Like he was getting, letters from big time D1 schools, and obviously he came down with his cancer that year, and was battling pretty much through mid season of his sophomore year on, and actually, fought his way through. Somehow was able to graduate and walk graduation with us shortly before he actually passed away. So Brian was always someone, that I look to, and I know all my teammates look to as an inspirational, motivational force. And all the perseverance and grit that he put into battling cancer. I mean, it's just, we felt that, and we felt that we had to give all that we could and work as hard as we could, because we were able. and really do that in memory and representation of him out on the field. So yeah, Brian, yeah, he would have, he would have definitely gone on to big time, I think, college football ranks, had he not gone through that. And I think a lot of my story, was really trying to embody that spirit that he represented, to get the most out of myself. And I certainly pushed myself just because, I saw so much of the perseverance that he went through.
As you said, the senior year rolls around. It's 2003, and yes, thankfully Homer back in the B West Division that year.
Yeah, thank God.
5-2 record, 5-3 overall. We'll talk about that third loss here when we get to it. But start out the season with a loss at Solvay, 30-16, but then came right back. Beat Westo 34-30. Beat Marcellus 39-7. Won Ascani Atlas as well, 24-12. Shut out Jordan Alberts 29-0. Beat Bishop Ludden 51-13. So after that first loss, ran off all 5 straight wins. So you're 5-1 going into the regular season finale, and of course, any trip to South Jeff is an adventure in itself because it's a nice little hike up to Adams. And unfortunately, the regular season finale ended up with a 34-19 loss. But what from that part of that part of the regular season, what do you take away from that? Like all of a sudden, you guys were back in B, and you were winning ball games.
Yeah, well, that Solvay game, you mentioned that one, and that one certainly sticks with me. I don't think Solvay had lights, so we played that game on a Saturday, and it was first game of the season, brutally hot. Still had the summer weather, 90 degrees. And Solvay was always such a cool place to play because they had, if you've ever been to their stadium, it's kind of raised, 3/4 around. So it's a bit of a horseshoe where everyone sets up, on the hill and can watch the game. And they were always a competitive team. So we lost, we did lose that one, but, that season, some things we didn't mention is going into that season, a lot had changed at Homer. The field was under construction, right? So we went from my junior season to playing all our home games at Cortland State when the field was under construction, to having the now field turf stadium at Homer in effect for the first time. So that was the first season that we had field turf at Homer. You could play our home games in Homer again, which is nice. So that changed, and in part of that process, there was, I think, a renovation of the weight room too. And so it was an amazing thing. I think about that summer going into my senior season, and we had moved the weight room to the bus garage, and we would meet, in the summertime, 3 days a week, 6:30 a.m. and get a run and a lift in, and we were working out in a bus garage, and no one thought anything was crazy about that. Like, we at least had access to weights and whatnot. But it's a special thing. Like, there's not many, not many folks like could just, kind of grab what was available and make the most of it and not think twice. And we did. And we really wanted to make sure that, having been successful in the JV ranks and in the modified ranks, that we were doing all we could to go into that season and be successful. So even though we started that first game to Solvay with a loss, like you said, we rolled off, I think, 5 after that. And that team, we had a real complete team that year. Like you mentioned, Will Rumsey at the quarterback position, and Will had a nice little career. Brian Hart was a good receiver for us. Derek Davis, as you mentioned, was just an absolute beast at fullback. We had a good team that year, and not the way I'd like to end the season, certainly, but those memories, I mean, they live on forever. There's nothing quite like high school football. It's just a really special thing. It's really for love of the game more than any other level of football. And I got to see that a little bit, as I grew and progressed in my career, that love fades a little bit. People play for different reasons, coaches, like, coaches have a job that they're getting paid for, and not everyone's not always on the same wavelength and the same vision. But we had that, and we loved it, and we had such a great time, and I'll forever cherish certainly those memories of playing those 2 seasons. I think back to the pep rallies we would have, or wearing your jersey to school on game day, and I mean, Friday Night Lights. There's nothing like it, that's for sure.
Well, you say, like I said, you were the feature back, again, 969 yards on the season, 16 touchdowns on the ground. And Derek ran for 156 yards from the fullback pass, scored a couple of touchdowns. But this again was the next wave of running backs coming along. You had a guy we'll talk about.
Nick Caruso.
Nick Caruso was one of those. Yeah. Toby Reese did some time, and there was a little known sophomore called Dustin Morris who came along, getting his first taste of varsity football. Ryan Du Bois was now part of the team as well. Let's see, Ben Connery was making his debut as far as a player.
Ben was good tight end for us. Yeah, and linebacker.
So and you said Brian Hart did have a great year. Will threw 60 passes, completed 60 for 114 for 889 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 4 of those were caught by Brian Hart. 18 catches for 360 yards. Ben Connery 14 catches, 174. Ryan Du Bois 10 catches, 181 yards. As we say, much as Derek was, didn't carry the ball much and was the block back. He caught 13 passes that year for 129 yards and a touchdown. So I mean, he was a threat out of the backfield as much as he was being a blocker and an occasional ball carrier.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, we had contributors from every position, and from a very veteran offensive line to some young guys that we're bringing up and skilled position. I think everyone had a lot of experience that year. And it was certainly fun. It was a fun season, and you can't beat it. I mean, you can't beat it.
And again, some familiar classmates back with you. That when we go back and talk about that offensive line, Charlie McTavish was back. Of course, Dan Lynch was back. David Pasilic, Brian Zarnecki was there. Pat McLaurin, Max Benz were the student. But a bunch of, again, we said. In the second year of varsity play, as only a junior was Jake Sotter. Shane Wilson was another junior. Sean Kraft, Tyler Eaton, Brandon Jones, and John Golly was among this group of linemen. And then there's another sophomore that went on to have a nice career over the years. Ken McConnell, we don't want to forget Kenny first, another one of the juniors on the team, but another sophomore, Nate Lyon, came up that year as a sophomore to play on the offensive line. So that was,
and defensive line. I mean, I remember Nate. He was just such a loose cannon. He's that guy that you don't want to play against, but you certainly want him on your team. And same with Jake too, man. We had Jake and Max as our tackles that year, and both those guys, were pretty big guys. So we actually had a decent sized line that year. And I remember. Yeah, he was someone that played with a lot of emotion, like and being young, we had to kind of help him cap those emotions sometimes. But like I said, those are the guys you always want on your team. The crazy ones that are on your side are always good teammates to have for sure.
And of course, that was a return to sectionals that year, and there's always the what if game. This is the what if for Homer people back in the day. Played at Oneida. Lou Siwula was not in the lineup that night, and then found out later he actually probably could have been playing that last game up at Oneida. A very young junior tailback was scared out of his wits, but ran for over 200 yards. That was Nick Caruso's coming out party. Actually, he ran for over 200 yards against Oneida that night. But a 29-28 loss, and unfortunately, you were reduced to a spectator for that ball game.
Hey, look, Nicky Caruso, like you said, he went for 200 yards. So I don't know what more I could have done. Actually, I think I blocked that part of my career out a little bit now that you bring it up. Because I was trying to think today. I'm like, how did my senior season end? And I couldn't think of it. I couldn't even think of who we lost to. And freaking Oneida. So again, I played with a guy at Cornell that went to Oneida and was actually my year. So in that game he was playing, a guy by the name of Ryan Blessing. But I'd been suffering from stingers, what they call in football. So, stingers usually when you get some sort of pinch in your neck and you get that numb sensation that goes all the way down your arm. And that was something that I struggled with even in college. Actually, I got a lot of stingers. And at the time, I think at one point, like both my arms went numb. So it was just, it's one of those things you want to be cautious about, for sure, when it comes to your health and your neck and your ability to feel your arms. So that's why I didn't play in that game. And yeah, it's a tough way to end a career, for sure, is not playing. And I remember, crying after the game in the locker room. That was it. And it was it just because that high school era, it like I said, it's just such a special thing. It's the guys you grew up with. It's the guys you're playing backyard football with from the start, that you're able to compete and represent your town and represent your school against, all those around us. And so it's definitely a tough way to go out, but, I was fortunate to kind of get my second life, continuing that career into college. And before we moved to that segment of it, I think back to high school, and I still, throughout all of college, I would always say this. I'm like, how the heck did I ever play every single play of a game? Because in high school, during that time, everyone, most of the guys on our team were going two ways. We didn't have a big enough squad to have offense and defense. And so I actually played corner on defense. We haven't talked about that, but I was a pretty good corner. I had 2 picks against Portland in that game junior year. So I forgot to mention that one, but that's all good. And that corner position, under the Homer D, you got the flat. So you're really just an outside linebacker. You're not a corner in the sense of, we would play cover 2 with corner playing the flat. So anything around the edge, I was there to blow it up. And I loved that. But then I was also on the kick, I was on the kickoff team. I returned kicks, I returned punts. I don't know if I was on the punt team. Maybe that was the one breath I got. But I would just be so gassed after the games, and I'm like, it was just normal to me. And like, that's pretty awesome too, because that's really the last level. And most of the country, at bigger high schools, like, they're not playing two ways in high school. So that was really the last, time that you were an offensive and defensive player. And then going into college, kind of have to make a decision to stick on one side of the ball or the other.
That's the thing. I would say Nick ran for 200 yards and had a great offensive game. But a lot of people still say we probably could. If Luke had been on the defensive side of the ball, is maybe where he missed him even more. Was your defensive play? Like you said, we don't talk as much about. You didn't talk as much quite about it. Your defensive play, but they're saying if we had, Luke was on defense, that would have, been a big part of, and we might have, been able to get that win.
Yeah, well, what if you can't do anything about it. So, what was meant to be was meant to be, and it was great, like you said, that Nick stepped into that role and absolutely tore it up. Before having, decent senior season himself and passing the torch to Dustin. And man, let me tell you what, since I've left Homer, like you said, this long line of running backs, these boys can run. Every year, I'm just like, man, there's someone new coming in there and just absolutely tearing it off. So again, I think that, comes down to really, the system and the fundamentals of the game and the fact that, Gary could put together a team every year where you're filling that spot. It's next man up. That's so important at any program to be able to have that next man up mentality where you're not feeling like you're missing anything or there's a gap from year to year. That's someone's opportunity. And because I think of the preparation and training most of us have had throughout our careers, people take advantage of it and people seize that opportunity. And, from the time I've left, they've just gotten better and better. So it's awesome to see. It's awesome to see the successes they've had and all the guys after me that, have absolutely torn up the record books. Um, I'm a fan, and I love watching it and catching up and checking in on the scores on Friday night every year for sure.
So as that season unfolded, your senior season stuff, you chose Cornell. You ended up going to Cornell for the education, but you got to play football, and you really did. You got for freshmen don't always play a lot, but you got in 5 or 6 games as a freshman, but then you're a sophomore and junior years. I mean, like we said, you just missed 1,000 yards both years at Homer. You may have got it that senior year if you'd played 90 game, you would have got your 1,000 yards. But I mean, your breakout year was your sophomore year at Cornell. You ran for 1,086 yards. Also had 18 catches for 175 yards and a couple touchdowns. Ran for 8 touchdowns, and that's really where people all of a sudden took a note of Luke Siwula, the kid from Homer, playing in the Ivy Leagues and playing good football.
Yeah, some things happened in between that time too. I think back to even just the recruiting. That was just such an exciting time in my life. Really pre-social media. I was getting handwritten letters from colleges all over the country. Mostly it was Division III schools and 1AA's. So, that was kind of the level of what I was looking at playing. But it always been a dream of mine to play, Division I sports in college. So definitely if that opportunity came up, I was going to seize it. And I actually wanted the Princeton's football camp and had been in contact with them, and they hadn't offered me yet when I did my official visit to Cornell, and that was an interesting trip because Cornell was in the process of transitioning coaches. So Tim Pendergast was the previous coach. He had just been fired the season prior, and so there's a new coach coming in by the name of Jim Knowles, who was actually the defensive coordinator of Ole Miss, a Cornell alum. He played linebacker back in the day in the early 90s. I think he was on Cornell's last championship team, actually. But he was also trying to save a recruiting class, right? So he didn't really know that much about me. He didn't know much about the guys in my class. He was in that transitionary period. So I had that official visit, and end of the weekend, you sit down with the coach, and really at that point he was just trying to press guys to commit, and I'd always thought of Cornell, having grown up obviously not too far away from Ithaca, as a place I didn't see myself, and for whatever reason, I got to experience life on the inside that weekend in my recruiting trip, and they put you up in the Statler, and you're hosted by players on the team currently to take you out. You're part of usually like either the spring game or checking in on spring practices, and I just had such a good time that weekend, and really saw myself, wanting the college experience there, and the ability to continue my football career at the Division I level, albeit 1AA, was interesting to me. So I committed on the spot actually that weekend, and right afterwards, I remember my mother turning to me and being like, "Whoa, like I thought like we were going to talk about that beforehand. You kind of just made that decision right there, huh?" And it felt right, and I obviously it's one of the best decisions I ever made. It went a long way for me, both from an athletic career and a career. So much of what I'm doing today is actually very tied into that network of Cornell football players. So yeah, so I got started and being close. Before I started school that fall, I was going up to Cornell in the summer and working out with the team before I'd even checked into my dorm. And I remember the very first person I met at Cornell was a senior at the time by the name of Dave Archer. He was the starting center of the team, and he was kind of the leader of the older guys and making sure that all those workouts are running smooth. And he's actually now the head coach at Cornell and longstanding head coach. And he's had that job since he was like 32 years old. So I met Dave, and I remember like I had on like my own workout clothes, right? And rule number one when you get into college athletics is you can't show up to the weight room unless you're wearing team issued workout clothes. And so the strength and conditioning coach, this guy Tom Hawley, who I had, who's a big influence on certainly my career and in my development as an athlete, and he was a real tough strength and conditioning coach. He was like 6'5", like 220, and just like chiseled. And he loves to let freshmen have it, and he just ripped me apart. So I was wearing like my Homer, gym shorts and like a t-shirt, and he sent me straight down to what they called the cage, where the equipment managers were, and got me changed up into some team issued gear, and that was my eye-opening experience. This ain't working out in the bus garage anymore. Like this is this is the real deal. And the other thing that still sticks with me going in that summer is I remember when I got to my senior year at Cornell, my first senior year, we'll get to that. One of my teammates, he'd read out our entire recruiting class, and I think we were about 30-something people going in that year, and maybe we graduated like 14 guys, right? There's a lot of attrition. Unfortunately, at that time, throughout those years from getting into graduating, and he read everyone's height and weight and where they're from, and I was 175 pounds. Of those 30 guys, I was the lightest guy recruited to Cornell of every freshman recruit, and really, that's why I mentioned the weight room as being such a big influence, and Coach Holly in college, because by the time I was really in my prime, I'd gained 40 pounds. I was playing at 215 rather than 175. So I put on a lot of muscle, and really built out and developed my body to be able to take the wear and tear of that next level.
I remember, I don't know if it was your junior, I don't know if it was it might have been your junior year for when you were the senior year, but I remember you were actually, I think, on the cover of the Cornell Media Guide even. You were well known. I was actually come over covering, I was coming over to Cornell on Saturdays to watch your games and stuff. What was it like? You said that sophomore year, 1,086 yards, 8 touchdowns on the ground, caught a couple of touchdown passes, and you followed.
Yeah, I think there's a little story even into that, right? Because here we were kind of like, this misfit class that Coach Knowles was just trying to save, and here I am, the latest of all of them. Trying to prove myself. And I remember, when you get to the college level, like we're not talking about, 30 guys on a team anymore. We're talking about 130 guys from all over the country. And that was a big eye opener. Like, talk about competition. You're competing with 130 other guys who were the best players at their high school. And that year was tough. Because as a freshman, there's the travel team, and then there's the guys that don't travel, and the travel team is whatever the roster limit is, and they suit up on game day, and they're the ones that go on their weight trips, et cetera, et cetera. And we wouldn't even suit up for the home games. We got moved to another locker room. Like, it almost felt like we weren't part of the team, and I hated it. And I think that's a lot of mentioning that chip on my shoulder. I'm like, I'm not here to be a second, like, I'm here to be a part of the team. I'm here to be a leader. I'm here to contribute. I'm not here to be sitting in another locker room on game day. And so, and even, I think back to when the team was traveling, everyone that wasn't, they'd make us do 6 a.m. workouts and like bust our ass. And I'm like, this is just the worst. I got to get on the road. So I just continued to, I think, a work ethic for me has always been one of my best qualities, and it's even success. And then I feel like I just busted my ass, worked hard to try to get the chance to play on special teams. And like you mentioned, halfway through the season, I made the travel team, the varsity suiting up on the sideline at home games and getting to travel. So I played about half the season freshman year on special teams, and and I actually even got a couple carries. I think I had like 3 carries my freshman year, and so even that was a big deal, for me. And I was still pretty far down the depth chart when it came to running back. There's 2 guys there's actually 3 guys that had pretty good experience that year: Andre Hardaway, Josh Johnson, and this guy Marcus Blanks, who actually had a couple good seasons before that. And I think back going into spring. So spring ball was always your chance to prove yourself. So this is now spring ball, freshman year, going into sophomore season. And Josh got hurt, Andre got hurt, Marcus was hurt. And that next man up mentality that, that exists within Homer that I mentioned, I was prepared and I was ready to go. So I was the starting running back in the spring game. And I made my mark. I took advantage of that opportunity. I tore it off, actually. I had like 2 touchdowns. Like, who is this guy? So I got most improved player, that spring ball. Hang on, I think my internet's coming in and out here. In a sec.
Yeah, you're back again now. Better.
I got most improved player that spring ball. And I always thought it was important to stay on in the summer, at least with the team, and make sure you were fit and in a spot to be successful. So stayed that summer. I think I built a house in Lansing that summer with my uncle, who in the steaming sun every day, and then go work out at Fort campus. And by the time the season rolled around, there's no questions as to the start. I took that opportunity. I didn't look back, and I held on to it from there.
Right. So we take 1,000-yard season as a sophomore, then junior year, 885 yards and 4 touchdowns that junior season. So, 2 good back-to-back years. And then, of course, you had a combined 2 senior seasons, kind of. You only got 3 games in as your official senior season. I think you ended up redshirting that year and came back and played again, the 2008, 2008 season, and, had 306 yards. So you finished your career, though, with 2,500 yards, average 4.3 yards per carry overall, 20 touchdowns. So, a nice career. I think what I got a kick out of, not only that, you had 46 catches for your career for another 410 yards and 4 touchdowns. But what I want to ask you about is that senior season. You had 1 chance to throw the ball. You went 1 for 1 for 3 yards and a touchdown.
That's right. Yeah, no, that was. I remember that one. So that was a cool year, because I think I had a receiving touchdown, a passing touchdown, and multiple rushing touchdowns. But you can't give me too much credit, because I think, if I remember correctly, the play, it had been a lot of what we had done was very much modeled after the Urban Meyer Utah model. My sophomore year, we had a 1,000-yard rusher in our quarterback as well, Ryan Coombe, who's a really great player out of Connecticut, good friend of mine. But there's a couple plays that Urban Meyer is known for. One's the inside shovel pass, so we ran a lot of that, and then this one was a Tebow play back in the day, where he actually he's running to the line, and so they handed the ball off to me, and then I just jumped past it to the tight end. So literally, this was the pass. There was no slinging it whatsoever. It was just lob it up and make sure the tight end caught it. So, but I did get that touchdown pass to the collegiate ranks, no doubt about it.
So, and like you said, you had very a good career at Cornell, and since then you've gone.
Yeah, look, it wouldn't be worth mentioning, because everyone likes to say like, oh, you had a good career at Cornell. Tom, you could have had a good career at Cornell. Anyone could have had a good career at Cornell, because my sophomore year, when I really had that breakout season, there was a fellow by the name of Kevin Booth, who was a 5th-year senior. And Kevin went on to play in the NFL for over 10 seasons. He won 2 Super Bowl rings. But I just run behind him, and no one could touch me for 6 yards. So that was my trick.
You just knew the right guy to get behind all the time.
Yeah. But I was fortunate enough. I actually played with 2 Super Bowl champions, a handful of NFL players. And it was cool just to kind of really get the sense of what that gap is, and having played with those guys who had success and won Super Bowls in the NFL level, two different guys. It made me really proud to see all that I accomplished, at that level. Literally, one step away from the professional ranks. And I do remember back, there was one season when I Googled myself or something like that, and I made the draft board, right? And I was like the 100th rated running back in the draft class of 2008 or something like that. And I'm like, all right, I'm on the draft board. Like, that's pretty cool. The 100th running back's never going to get selected in the draft, but there.
There.
Cool to see. Yeah, it was cool to see.
So, what's Luke Siwula do now? As now your playing days are over, what's Luke do?
Yeah, so I got a lot going on. Currently, I'm a partner in a financial technology startup that was actually founded by a Cornell football player. So I went on out of Cornell. Everyone wanted to get into Wall Street and work for the big investment banks and make all the money. And so that was the competitive thing. That was the highest paying job, the most difficult job to get out of Cornell. That's kind of where, my competitive nature pushed me toward. And I had ended up working at Deutsche Bank, Germany's biggest bank, for 7 years. And I got into that opportunity actually through a Cornell football player, Chip Stevens. Was there, decided I wanted to kind of move away from the large corporate environment. Left to go work for a startup that trades corporate bonds. And then we got bought by my current company, TrueMid. And I sit down with the guy, the CEO and founder of my current company. First time I've ever met him. And we start talking, and I'm like, hey, I graduated, my name is Luke, yada, yada, I graduated Cornell 2008. He's like, oh, I graduated Cornell 1996. And I'm like, oh, I played football. He's like, oh, I played football. And so that's been, the best thing about that opportunity to play at the collegiate level is that network has really benefited me and opened up doors and opportunities that might not have existed otherwise. So I'm there now. I've been there 5 years. I'm a partner there. We've grown a ton. We're a multi-billion-dollar company. And with COVID happening, so I've lived in New York City the last 13 years. And with COVID happening, I didn't really want to be in New York in 2020. I was barely there. So I gave up my apartment last March, put everything in storage. So I got a storage unit somewhere in the Bronx I've never even seen, with all my stuff in it. And because we're working remote, I've just been a nomad. I've just been traveling for the last year, visiting friends and family, and different places and events that are going on. And as long as I have working internet, which is a little shaky, in this interview here, I'm able to tap in and do my job. So that's what I'm doing on the day to day. And then I've got a lot of outside interests that I'm, privately invested in. So certainly busy. I know it was a tough time locking me down for this interview. I got all sorts of different things going on, and I'm rarely in one city for longer than 2 weeks. So it's been good though. I'm very fortunate to A, have a job, after everything that's happened, and B, have one that allows me to really have that freedom and independence.
Well, yeah, I know when we started talking, try to put this together, you were in Colorado. So, I mean, yeah, you've been a little bit of everywhere when we've tried to lock this down. But Luke, I'm glad we got a chance to talk today, and talk a little bit about the career, a little bit about Cornell and what you're up to. So, I want to thank you for taking time to talk to us today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks for finally locking me down, and happy to tell my story and connect with anyone that might hear this.
Well, that said, that'll do it for this edition of Trojan Football Talk. Today's show brought to you by American Credit Union, for every day, for everything, located next to Little Caesars at 3944 Route 281 in Cortland. But our Cortland Voice, the exclusive media partner of Trojan Football Talk, for all your local news and sports in Cortland County at no cost to you. Check out cortlandvoice.com. By the Royal Auto Group on Route 281 in Cortland, the home of no hassle, no razzle dazzle. Check them out at royalautogroup.com. By Yemen Real Estate at the entrance to Yemen Park off I-81, exit 11 in Cortland. By Nikki C's Hometown Pizzeria and Meatball Shop on Route 281 next to Hobo's in Homer. Find them online for fast, secure ordering or call 607-749-5300. They have a unique menu with dietary-specific options. Nikki C's, your grab-and-go specialists. By Graftex, located on Elm Street in Cortland. Founded in 1984, they provide custom screen printing and embroidery for teams and local businesses. Graftex continues its dedication to servicing customers' needs for innovative graphic designs, custom and printed apparel, and quality service. They are easy to contact at 1-800-417-7791. By Seven Valley Agency at 18 Tompkins Street in Cortland for all your personalized insurance services. Give them a call at 607-753-1821 or check them out online at sevenvalleyagency.com. Seven Valley Agency, where your money matters, our advice counts. By M&D Deli, located on Central Avenue in Cortland, open Monday through Friday from 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. M&D has breakfast sandwiches, bakery items, and daily lunch specials. They are also available for catering. Check out their Facebook page for more information. Stop by or call 607-753-TO-GO. That's 753-8646, and look for the new food truck coming this spring. By Crop Growers LLP, the first choice in crop insurance located in Homer. Contact KC Slade at 607-591. Let's try it again. Contact KC at 607-591-2460 for more information. First time I've really struggled with that one. This is an easier one. And by First National Bank of Dryden at 12 South Main Street in Homer. Safe, secure, and locally owned for all your banking needs. For more information, stop by, call 607-662-4179, or check them out online at drydenbank.com. So from my guest, Luke Siwula, and yours truly, Tom Vartanian, thanks for listening, and we'll talk again soon.